If you're a communist or socialist and you happen across an M240 or M249 or other belt-fed open bolt, fully automatic machine guns, I want you to take the spent brass off those belts, relink them up, and loop them back around into the feed tray. That's going to make sure you get the second firing on that brass. For everybody else, I want you to like, subscribe, and tickle that little notification icon for some more content. Thanks for watching. Okay, welcome to another episode of On the Road with Chris, where you're going to ride bitch and we're going to talk about some self-sufficiency and whatnot. Today, we're going to talk about the name of the channel / podcast, Homestead Tech Talk. What's that mean? Well, that means we're going to be talking about how to use technology to increase productivity, to make your homestead better, and to be more self-sufficient and self-reliant. Well, what do I mean by that? Okay, well, there's a lot of technology that you can utilize to do these things. It's 2024, September 15, 2024. We live in a world full of information. You can learn anything on YouTube. Now, be careful. You might want to make sure you're taking the right advice from the right people, but you can learn literally anything on the internet nowadays. And there's also this wonderful thing called ChatGPT. It's an AI. Don't always trust it. It will get you started, but verify it. I've actually used this thing to do complex calculations, and it does fairly well. So I used it to calculate how much. Well, let's backtrack. There will also be a video on this where I show you how to design stuff on Tinkercad. And recently, I designed a rainwater filter that'll go over top of my rainwater barrels, and it's 3D printable. It's an STL file. I believe that stands for stereo lithography. Now, don't quote me on that. But an STL file is a 3D model that is the basis of a 3D printed file. Get a 3D printer, guys. Worth its weight in gold. I paid $125 on eBay in 2019 for a used Ender 3. That's a Creality Ender 3. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. I spent another $200 or $300 in upgrading it to where it'll print polycarbonate. I've got it in an enclosure now. There will be a whole video on that. It's going to be long. I'm going to make it long. It's not going to be short. It won't be broken down into a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of time lapses of just me putting stuff together. But I built a whole enclosure for this thing, changed the hot end. I've got it ran off a Raspberry Pi 4B with Octoprint so I can control it anywhere in the world through Octo Everywhere. And I've got it lighted. I've got it set up for octolapses. I'll show you some of those cool octolapse clips of the rain barrel stuff and everything. Also, Tinkercad. Tinkercad is free. If you don't know shit about CAD, Tinkercad's the easiest one to learn. I'm a machinist. I was a machinist before I was a master electrician. I was a machinist before I was even a Marine. I started working in a machine shop when I was 16 years old. And then when I got back out of the Marine Corps, I continued to work in a machine shop. I'm very familiar with CAD and G-code and how all that works. And so AutoCAD is what I was familiar with. Fusion 360 is somewhat similar to AutoCAD. It's very similar to AutoCAD. I used to have Fusion 360, the free membership. You can't do a lot with the free membership. Mostly I just tinker on Tinkercad now. I'm learning Onshape. It's Onshape. It's free, but everything stays on their cloud. That's the only bad thing. Look up Teaching Tech YouTube channel. That's how I'm learning Onshape, is through him. I learned Tinkercad through the Tinkercad tutorials. I don't know everything about Tinkercad, but I know a lot. And I've designed a lot of stuff on Tinkercad. And I've imported STL files from like Thingiverse and stuff to tinker with on Tinkercad. But anyways, long story long, I used GPT to calculate. I was building a rain barrel filter. I gave it the dimensions that I wanted. GPT calculated how much limestone and sand I would need as a medium, the correct angle for the window screen to get optimum wash through of any organic matter coming down the gutter, but still allowing the most water to pass through. Turns out it was 45 degrees. I opted for 40 because it worked and it would fit on the build plate, where 45 just wasn't quite going to work for me. And I designed this whole thing. I've got it mostly 3D printed out. You'll see that in a video. And we'll test it with the proper amount of media that GPT calculated, and we'll see if it was right. We'll see if it'll be able to get the maximum flow through with still filtering everything the way I want it to. So I'm using it for that. And I've 3D printed a lot of stuff. I have 3D printed an entire lower receiver for an AR-15. I'm actively putting that together too. I plan on putting it together, testing it. I'll do some videos on it, and then if I get enough interest on those videos, i.e., I get more than like 20 or 30 views on it, I'll do another video on how to print the whole thing, printing the whole thing, the assembly of the whole thing, and testing the whole thing. So stay tuned for that. And if you are interested in that, please comment and let me know you're interested in that. I would love to do videos like that. I just don't know. I want to keep you guys interested. I can ramble on about the technical details of everything all day long, but if it's not interesting to you, you're not going to watch it and you're not going to learn anything. And my ultimate goal here is not to get a bunch of views or anything. I just want to teach you guys how to do this stuff. Because the more people learn how to do these things, the better off we will be as a society. Because ultimately, overall, regardless if you're left, right, in between, your sexual orientation, political affiliation, I don't care if you're a damn transsexual furry. If you're learning self-sufficiency, self-reliance, you're actively practicing it, and you're taking you're taking into account your individual liberty and responsibility, and you're taking your defense in your own hands, and you're not relying on the government for a bunch of crap. Society, regardless of whatever you believe in, is going to be better because of that. And I think that we could all get along as people, as human beings, and regardless of religion or anything, and become a better society if we just get back to the way we used to, where people grew their own food, took care of their own defense, all this good stuff. I think it would help. And technology is a part of that, and 3D printing is a huge part of that technology. Also, I can use GPT to calculate, how much food and water I would need to store for my family based on our usages. I can input this, it can calculate the math. This thing can do complex chemistry calculations. I asked it the other day, I was just curious. I got a bunch of used motor oil from changing my lawnmower oil. I was like, well, what would happen if I put this in a niter bag? Which would be a mixture of sulfuric acid and nitric acid in a specific arrangement. I'm not going to go into the details on it on YouTube. I don't want to get the people on me. But it said, it could create some volatile chemical compounds. It broke down. It would create different nitrobenzenes. It would create different nitroalkalines, different things. And I was like, okay, well that's neat. Because I know what would happen if I did paper and cotton balls. That ends up being nitrocellulose. If I do glycerin, it ends up being nitroglycerin. If I put if I nitrate toluene and leave it in a niter bath long enough, it becomes either dinitrotoluene, which is a retardant in smokeless powders, or it becomes trinitrotoluene, which is a high explosive that was traditionally used in bombs in World War II. But there's some things that I don't know, and I had this thing write a balanced equation, and it came up with some interesting results on it. And naturally it had the disclaimers, it's very dangerous, you don't want to try this, but you really don't want to try this stuff at home. I have a chemistry background, it's the only reason I was curious about it. but stuff like that. So I can get melting points, I can get different ideas to come up with. I can give this thing different optimal dimensions, and it helps me take what's scattered in my brain, because I'm fairly scatterbrained. I got a lot of stuff going on in here. A lot of the times, I'm one of my best friend in the Marine Corps. He called me the smartest dumb person he knew, or the dumbest smart person. I can't remember. I don't articulate things well. I got a lot of shit rattling around in here. To put things in perspective, I took an IQ test in 4th grade and scored the highest in the country on, or top 1% in the country on everything except for language mechanics. I failed out on language mechanics. They made me take the ACT, which is like, I guess, the more advanced version of the SAT. They made me take that in 8th grade, and I scored a 33 on it. I didn't really understand. Nobody ever explained to me what that even meant, though. That was a problem. I thought I did bad on it, like a 33 out of 100, like a 33%. Well, I think it's scored out of 38, and I actually did exceptionally well on it in 8th grade. But I'm not very good at organizing my thoughts into coherentness to where I can make something happen out of it. And GPT helps me with that, because I can type in random garbled bullshit, and it kind of spits out a useful information, or a useful answer to it. Asperger's. Yeah, I think they call that Asperger. I got some kind of Asperger's or some shit. I don't know. Either way, yeah. So GPT is extremely handy for that. For all my D&D nerds out there, we recently used ChatGPT to DM a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. The caveat to that is, I never understood what that game was. I saw a bunch of weird people playing it in high school, and I was like, what the fuck, you know? And then it turns out, like, the first time I played is with some coworkers. They're all like, you should try playing D&D with us, bro. I'm like, man, I don't know what the fuck that is, you know? Get the fuck out of here. Well, I tried it. I was 34. And it's actually fun. It's kind of cool. So I'm a D&D nerd now. I'm a redneck hillbilly D&D playing gun nut. Fucking make that make sense. But yeah. I don't know, just me, man. Just me. But yeah. So it's $20 a month. I do subscribe to it. It is handy to have. There's a bunch of different language models you can use on it to do different things. Play around with it, see what it's about. Definitely get a 3D printer. Things that I have 3D printed that have made my life better. I've 3D printed a primer catcher for my Lyman T-Spar press. I've 3D printed a lot of things that make life better. I've 3D printed a complete aeroponics, a hydroponics setup, and actively grew tomatoes and peppers and stuff in it, and it worked out great. Like, I 3D printed that thing for maybe 20 or 30 bucks. And if you go buy one, like the Better Garden or whatever you see on the Facebook ads, them fuckers are like $350, $400. Hell, on Etsy, I saw people selling the same one I 3D printed for $125. Kind of thought about doing that. Hey, if you guys ever want to buy a 3D printed aeroponics setup, I will mail you the entire setup, everything you need, including the stuff you buy off Amazon. I'll get you started for, say, $150. I'll 3D print the whole thing for you. Send me a comment, email me at homesteadtechtalk@outlook.com if you're interested in me 3D printing you some stuff. If not, no big deal. The offer's there. I could use a little bit extra money. You guys can use my hydroponic stuff. You can 3D print a lot of cool stuff. Go check out Deterrence Dispensed if you don't believe me. There's an entire 3D printed firearm called the FCG-9, and it works. 3D printing is a game changer. I can 3D print self-watering flower pots. I can 3D print all kinds of gardening stuff. I can 3D print useful tools, vices. I'm driving right now, so I'm trying to think all. I 3D printed most of my 3D printer upgrades. Like, it's pretty cool. And depending on the filament you use, you know, you're going to get different results. PLA will melt outside in the sun under certain conditions. PETG does not. Polycarbonate's probably going to be the strongest one. Carbon fiber or fiberglass reinforced things don't always make them stronger, but they make them more rigid and less able to bend, which is handy for firearms. Glass-filled nylon is extremely popular to print. You can 3D print firearm magazines. You can 3D print the wrapping mechanism. I'm getting ready to probably 3D print. I have a bolt-action Winchester 12-gauge bolt-action shotgun that the magazine is missing the spring and everything. I'm probably going to try to 3D print a whole new magazine for it and rewind a spring and make this thing back into a useful firearm. We'll see if it works or not. Who knows? 3D printed Glocks, 3D printed SIGs, 3D printed magazines. You can 3D print a lot of cool stuff. Other cool things, 3D printed brass catchers, 3D printed gun sights, 3D printed Picatinny rings, 3D printed hand stops, 3D printed foregrips. The list goes on. If you can think of it, you could probably 3D print it. And if you don't want it to be plastic, get some foundry sand and 3D print you a castable model and cast it out of aluminum using foundry sand. I got 10 pounds of foundry sand for that purpose. I'm also working on a 3D printed, magnetically levitated new motor design. I'm not going to go into details on it for obvious reasons. Sometimes people get themselves in trouble with stuff like that. So I might edit that out. Anyways, nah, fuck it, I'll just send it. You don't know what I'm talking about. But I got a good feeling that it's going to work. And it's mostly 3D printed. And if it works, I will not go mainstream with it. I'll just give everybody STL files and let you all go to town. Open source, baby. That's some of the good technologies coming out. Other good technologies, privacy. Use the Brave browser. Use VPNs. Make it as hard as you can for people to track what you're doing, regardless whether you're doing something illegal or not. If you could be the most upstanding, law-abiding citizen, make it hard as hell for them to get your data, track what you're doing, and listen to your phone conversations. If everybody collectively makes things hard for the government to do those things, and the government is doing those things. I don't know if you know a guy named Edward Snowden. If you don't, look him up. He basically proved that all that stuff was going on. He's hiding out in Russia right now, and he used to work for the NSA. Yeah, look up the 2011 or 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. A lot of nasty stuff in there. And this is real, guys. Take your privacy seriously. And we can only do that through technology. And there's old technologies that are good too. Ham radios. Guys, we gotta get ham licenses. We gotta get good at ham communication. Yes, you can be DF'd, but there are ways to circumvent that, and it is the freest form of communication you're gonna have, minus all the ham operators that are gonna be FUDs if you're not a ham operator. Ham operators will turn you into the FCC faster than anything because they had to pay for a license and all the license stuff. You did. Yeah. Watch out for FUDs. FUDs are bad. Okay. And with that, hit 19 minutes, guys. We'll pass time, keep it below 20, right? That's what I promised. I'm gonna get out of here. Get to 3D printing, look up Thingiverse, look up Deterrent Suspense, download Odyssey. It's like YouTube on a blockchain. I have a channel there too. There's STL files on Deterrent Suspense, the catalog, everything. Download these STL files, keep them on a private server, keep them on an external hard drive where nobody can take them from you. Code is free speech. And with that, I'm out. Love you guys.